When you communicate with others, do you find that it's hard for people to understand you? Or is it that it's hard for you to understand others? One reason could be that we're lacking skills in how to speak or to how to listen. But another reason could be that we're lacking self-awareness. If you're interested in exploring this and learning how to communicate more deeply, keep watching. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is David Listen. I am a life coach, mindfulness and meditation instructor, and a licensed counselor in the state of New York. And with my work with people doing counseling as well as doing coaching, I have quite a bit of experience in helping people learn how to communicate more effectively. And I myself am still learning every day of my life. I found that one of the biggest problems with communication is not only just lacking communication skills, but our lack of self-awareness. Self-awareness, simply, is our ability to be aware of our thoughts, our feelings, and whatever is happening within our body and mind in the present moment. And we may also be able to somewhat read other people just based on their expressions or movements. Not that we can really read their minds, but that we have some sense of what they may be experiencing. So with self-awareness, this capacity to know clearly our thoughts as they arise, we also become aware of the nature of our thoughts. These phenomena of our mind, these images and words that come and go, are basically changing all the time. And even though we have a working memory, which can draw from our experience and which stores our experience in images as well as different feelings, and then which is processed with our language, the more self-aware we are, the more we can realize the limitation of our thoughts. We can realize that our thoughts are just a representation of reality. They're just a representation of ourself, a representation of other people, representation of the physical world. They can't capture reality completely. Why? Because reality is constant change. Everything about our experience as a person and everything within the whole world, even within the whole universe, is constantly changing moment to moment. Just like the saying, "You can't step in the same river twice," expresses that fact. We perceive a river to be a thing, but a river is actually just flowing water. It's not a thing that stays the same. A river itself is constant movement, constant change. Our bodies, our feelings, and our thoughts are also just like that. They're also rivers of phenomena, rivers of human experience that from one moment to the next, we may have a completely different feeling. And from one moment to the next, we may have a completely different perception of something or someone. So that's why our minds are always changing, and one day we may be happy with a person, the next day we're very upset. One day we think another person or ourselves is great, it's wonderful. The next day we may think that same person is terrible. But in reality, all those opinions, all those perceptions are just thoughts. They're just representations. They can't really capture reality. But quite often, in the moment of our thinking, especially if that thinking is creating a lot of emotion, whether it's anger or sadness or even confusion, in the moment of emotional thinking, we often don't realize the process of thinking. And that's when we can get lost. That's when we can get lost in our assumptions. Assumptions are when we think we know something about a person, usually, but we actually don't. We assume to know the truth, but it may not be that way. Why do we think we know what someone else feels or what someone else is thinking, even when we don't? At the moment we make an assumption and we think, oh, I know what he thinks, or oh, I know what she's feeling. At that moment, we're actually lacking awareness. We're lacking the awareness that our representation is just a thought. When we do that, we cling on to those thoughts and ideas, and it blinds us from seeing the truth about that person. Have you done that before? Have you had a situation where you think, oh, I know what's best for that person. They should just do this and they should just do that, and everything will be fine. But actually, what happens is something quite different. They do something completely different than what we assumed would be good for them. And they may turn out fine. Or they may follow the advice that we give them, but it turns out that our advice was wrong. We didn't know what was best for that person. These are assumptions. And in addition to assumptions, we often get caught in our memory. So if we had a particularly unpleasant discussion with someone, we often ruminate about it, right? We think about the argument over and over and over again. We may think about what we're going to say next to them so that we can win the argument. We may be thinking about how terrible it was for them to say something to us. We ruminate, we think in a cyclic way over and over, in a way that just causes us pain and suffering. It doesn't help us move forward. And sometimes we get lost in the future. We get lost in imagination and thinking about how things may turn out, whether positive or negative. So in either situation, overthinking the past, overthinking the future, and holding on to our assumptions or beliefs about other people, we can get caught. And once we get caught in overthinking, it can be exhausting. We could spend hours, even days, in our loops of thought and feel like we can't escape. In some cases, when we get caught in overthinking, it can lead to overproductive speech that we may not even be aware of. So when we talk to people, we end up talking and talking and talking at length without realizing how much time has passed, without realizing what we're really feeling, and also without even noticing that the person we're talking to may be getting frustrated already, or that that person really isn't able to listen for any longer. Unless that person is assertive and tells you they can't listen anymore, they may end up becoming more frustrated, and we may end up still talking more, trying to get a response from that person. In those situations, our overproductive speech and the possible underproductive speech by the other person creates a barrier to communication. And even in situations where both people are able to speak, going back and forth, if there's a lack of self-awareness, we'll still be quite fixated on our own thoughts and by the things that we're saying and not able to hear the other person. So when we fixate on our own ideas and assumptions about the other, it can be really difficult to make any progress in communication, and that's when we get stuck. So what can we do to develop awareness and prevent these barriers of rumination, overproductive speech, or barriers to listening? The first thing we can do to develop self-awareness is to stop. We can stop whatever we're doing and just pause to reflect. inwards, to reflect on our thoughts and feelings. You can call this meditation, but you can just call it stopping. Stopping and looking deeply. It could be in any posture, actually, especially if it's in the moment of communication. We can just take a pause. We can even let the other person know, honey, I just need to take a pause for a moment. Or whoever it is you're talking to. You could tell the person, I'm sorry, I just need a moment to pause. You can even close your eyes. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can have your eyes open, but you're looking inwards with your mind. You're becoming aware of, what do you feel in that moment? What are you thinking in that moment? To facilitate that, it can help to be aware of your breathing first. Just notice your breathing. If you need, you can take a deep breath and relax as you breathe out. Allow your body to relax. When we relax our body, it's easier to relax or let go of our rumination. And then we just observe. We notice our thoughts and feelings coming and going. We don't need to focus on or try to catch any one thought or any one feeling. We just stop. And we let ourselves become aware of naturally what is coming and going in the mind. At the moment of stopping, relaxing, we can immediately see more clearly what is that thought or train of thought that we are clinging onto. Once we notice that it's just a thought, it's just a representation, we can let it go, which means we may not have to get rid of it completely. We could still bring it up. But our way of communicating that thought is now much more relaxed. It's much more flexible. So we could bring up an idea and ask the person, hey, you know what? This is what I observed. Is this true? Or we can even simplify it and just simply state, this is what I saw. I'm curious as to what you think and as to what you feel. We can have our observation, communicate our observation, but we let go of assuming that it's true, and we're now open to asking the other person. We're opening ourselves up to listening to what they have to say. And maybe we'll find out that our assumption was totally wrong. Maybe we'll find out that our assumption was partly true, or maybe we find out that we did observe something correctly, but still, that moment is past. We have a new moment in front of us right now to be with that person and to continue to communicate openly by not holding on rigidly to our ideas, but simply expressing them, and now inviting the other person to express themselves. So when we stop and when we look deeply, you may find that the rumination and overproductive thinking starts to quiet down. In some cases, you might find that your mind gets very silent. There's no more rumination. But to whatever degree we can stop, be still, and look deeply, we'll find that our mind becomes much more spacious, much less crowded by rumination and overthinking, so that we have more space or more bandwidth to observe ourselves deeply, and we have more space to invite the other person to express themselves. And we have a better ability to observe them deeply, to look and to listen deeply, with less interference from our own assumptions and preconceived ideas. So this is the practice of stopping and looking deeply to develop awareness. If we can do this routinely every day, we can cultivate a more calm and stable state of body and mind, which is the foundation for deep communication. In following videos, I'll talk more about communication skills. So based on this foundation of self-awareness, what skills can we use to communicate more effectively, to better express ourselves, and to better invite others to express themselves?